and to look at the project in another way as it pertains to programmatic sustainability. And I apologize if this sounds a little bit on the morbid side, but there seems to be a human value that we can connect to sustainability. And like a person who is near their death, a project that is unable to sustain itself and become a program essentially is dying. We've all seen this in real world examples, and I believe there are lessons to be learned that might help the current projects that we work with advance into a program. So if you have ever been at someone's side during the last moments of their life, you would most likely have witnessed your loved ones or whoever it was, his last wishes, final remarks, declarations, and sadly enough, the regrets that they have had for a lifetime. When it is happening, your ears and more importantly, your heart must be open and accepting of these gems that are being offered. In the book, Final Gifts, Understanding the Special Awareness, Needs, and Communications of the Dying, it is clear that what transpires, though it may be confusing at times, the person laying there, they know exactly what it is that is going on and what it is that needs to be said. So there are two nurses that wrote this book, Maggie Callahan and Patricia Kelly, and they believe that these patients were getting a glimpse of their life after death. But regardless of whatever they want to explain it, they wanted other people to know how common these remarks were and to see them as offering important insights into a person's spiritual and emotional needs and their experience of death. And what they did was they interviewed and observed these patients, and they came up with a list of the top 5 regrets that they all had in common. And we were able to tie it to programmatic sustainability topics. So what we're going to do is go down through the list of the top 5 regrets. We're going to compare it, and we're going to apply it to programmatic sustainability. So out of the 2,000 patients that they surveyed, the number one most common regret identified was, I wish I'd had the courage to live a life true to myself, not the life others expected. There. I wish I'd had the courage to live a life true to myself, not the life others expected of me. And when people realize that their life is almost over, and they look back clearly on it, it is easy to see how many dreams of theirs have gone unfulfilled. So most people have not honored even a half of their dreams and had to die knowing that it was due to choices they had made or not made. And this is also true with respect to Native organizations and communities that we work with at every level and in pretty much every region. And we took this as a way to look at the leadership in the organization, the organizational capacity, establishing their identity, who are you, and what do you stand for, as well as mission statement and strategic plan, and integrating elements of programmatic sustainability into that. And pretty much it's your organization's hopes and dreams. Can you as an organization be true to yourself and live your life to the best of your ability and overcome fear and pursue happiness in your community? And strategies that we would use to avoid having to have that regret would focus on making a conscious effort to visualize who you are, what you stand for. Like I was saying in the imagination, where you have to have the idea first and then the physical. So this is the part where the beginning part, and where you want to decide and clearly define what you want to get out of life for the project. Then what you actually are doing, if you don't do that, what you actually are doing is making it easier for other people and circumstances to shape you and your organizational goals by default. So you no longer are in control of your destiny. And the first steps that you would take is to do an assessment, basically gather information that describes your organization's current situation and the environment in which it operates. Planners often call this a situational analysis or audit. Typically it includes a narrative description of your organization, including its history, values, mission, programs, leadership, staffing, and finances. In many cases, something called a SWOT analysis, a detailed description of your organization's strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. And some organizations take the process a little further and conduct a PEST or PEST analysis, which would include also political, environmental, social, and technical factors that currently affect the organization. Many organizations use both, and depending on the situation, and depending on the size of your organization and what you're going to use it for, you would either do one or the other or both. So whichever is necessary, it would help you get a handle on where you're at, who you are, what you stand for, and that will shape the kind of program and services that you can offer to the community. The second most not popular, but the second most regret that these people were saying was happening was that they wish they hadn't worked so hard. In other words, they were missing out on things in life. They were missing out on their children growing up. They were missing out on spending time with their companion. And it really took its toll. And at the end, this is the second regret, where they wish they had more time to spend with companions and loved ones, but it was too late and too little. And what I like to call this section is what you do and how well you do it. And what happens is, in looking at the projects and the programs that you're offering, on the services that the community is saying they need, have to line up and have to be in concert with your mission statement and with what you believe in. And when you have that, you have the beginnings of a project that can successfully transform into a program. The services need to be intentional and supported by documented community needs. The commitment by your own organizational leadership must exist regardless of whether it has funds or not, and usually the organization will already be dedicating funds to it. And as far as the community goes, we're talking about creating programs and services, program services that are indispensable or essential to your community, and they basically rely on you for what it is that you do. And once you create that kind of a relationship, it lends towards programmatic sustainability. Building your organizational capacity to meet the community's demonstrated needs, as well as managing and leveraging the resources that you have available to you in terms of the value that they create for providing your projects and program services. And what I was finding was that it's not so much about the money, because money is the short-term sustainability, And the more important things that were coming up in the research I was doing was things like being essential for your community and other strategies. Work smart, not hard. Trying to provide the right service to the right people at the right time. And a lot of that was gained by re-examining your program design, seeking feedback from the partners or participants, the staff, the leadership, community stakeholders, or funders even, and always taking a look at the design and continuously improving your program. Those are signs that you're in tune with your project and you're wanting to make improvements to serve the community better. And the type of feedback that you'll be asking for is what is the structure of the program? What are the program's objectives? Are they meeting those objectives? Are there any other emerging community needs that need to be met? And that kind of data that you would be collecting, you would be using to drive changes and improvements to your project and your services. You would collect the program-related information using a combination of different surveys, focus groups, informal conversations, and things of that nature. Emphasize the importance of training and cross-training in your project to the frontline staff so everybody knows each other's jobs, and include the site supervisors as well. You also want to encourage community and participant involvement in the inner functioning of the program to fine-tune the program, invite feedback from community and participants, because that makes them have ownership and feel involved. And it's always good to solicit and use their input when making changes to the program. Okay, next. The number 3 regret was, I wish I'd been able to express my true feelings instead of keeping them in. And we were able to tie this to communication within your programmatic sustainability plan. And what happened was that many people were suppressing feelings, sometimes in order to keep peace with others, or as a result, they would settle for a mediocre existence and never become who they're truly capable of becoming. Many would even develop illnesses relating to some kind of bitterness or resentment that they carried around, and they regretted having to have that with them as they were going out. So, developing good communication skills is fundamental to programmatic sustainability and the success of it, because particularly now where so many employees have so many different avenues of communication and with technology advancing, it's easy to engage or over-engage with participants, staff members, and it's all about the leadership having a good plan to harness that kind of communication skills. And there are other strategies that were important for programmatic sustainability. Establishing a genuine connection with everybody involved in your project, and hopefully making it into a program. There were some strategies and tools that you could use. For example, use informal and formal channels, or share company news via emails and newsletters, but then also take the time to sit personally at the desk of, say, a key person on your staff and then we're walking back from lunch to visit and ask questions and be able to really cut through confusion and talk to them and get what they're feeling on any subject. And then I read something interesting where it said, where possible, speak to the person and try to avoid email or text or chat rooms, because it's 1,000 times better and more effective. And then you can always follow up with an email if you just have to send one. There's also a tell the right people the right things principle, and this is key because you don't have communication favorites the people that you always communicate with, and then some that you don't. That creates a little bit of distrust and lack of loyalty, and then it's not good to really talk to anyone about mistakes or weaknesses of another. So those are just some kinds of things that strategies that you want to use in communication. Also, there's one that says tell them everything or tell them nothing, because if you tell people half the story, it could be dangerous. Either they'll invent the missing information, and if you're not ready to tell the full story, rather just say nothing, because in most situations it's better to tell it all early, and if you didn't, then it's not going to be good. So as far as transparency goes, ensure that there are clear lines of communication between all the parties involved in the program or project, the staff, the participants, the volunteers, the project leadership, any partners, collaborators, community stakeholders, and the organizational leadership. Communicate early and often. This is a good tool to use in communication, because you don't want people to start making things up, especially if it's regarding program services, because of a lack of information. If you don't communicate only once and think people will get it, they almost certainly won't repeat the message in different ways and at different times in order to get it across. Also, if there's something that is confidential and you want to share with them to build trust and buy-in, that's basically up to the organization to make that call. But even if it's sensitive stuff, mostly people will be mature and will value being brought into the inner circle, and will, like I said before, build trust and loyalty. Then, as far as the program, the results of the program, and sharing the impacts with, say, government offices and funders, it's good to seek out champions for your program and let other organizations know about your program's accomplishments. Target organizations that benefit directly and indirectly from your program's activities. Show them how your program's mission is assisting their organization with its mission. So if you seek to build these types of relationships with other organizations, you will gain supporters and advocates. And it's always good to increase awareness of the program in the community, and you would do this by continually work at building awareness of your program in your community, because if you seek opportunities to inform the public about your program, or write articles for newsletters or organizations whose missions complement your program's missions, speaking at meetings when you can, or recruit members of other organizations to serve on your program's board or on an advisory board. It's also good to be as creative as possible to find opportunities to educate the public about your program, its missions, and its accomplishments. And even if the stories are little, it's good to celebrate the wins. If they're small and frequent, better yet, success builds belief. So share the news of a big placement or a big order or a big a milestone that you hit, and everybody will win. So, and we'll get to number 4. So number 4 regret was, I wish I had stayed in touch with my friends and my family. And of course, we immediately tied it to partnerships and collaboration in programmatic sustainability, because sometimes that could happen in your organization where you needed a partner, and because you didn't stay in touch with them over the years, and you know they could have helped you, things like that. You don't want to have that kind of regret, and make it cause you not to be able to sustain your project. Because it is true that you do not truly realize the full benefits of old friends until it's too late, and by then it's not always possible to track them down. Many become caught up in their own lives, and they let golden friendships or partnerships slip by over the years. So those are some deep regrets about not giving the friendships or partnerships the time and effort that they deserved. And everyone misses their friends when they are dying. An organization is no different. It also has relationships that merit nurturing and maintaining, most of which are mutually beneficial to both parties and the community. So, what are the types of qualities that you would look for in a partner? You no doubt heard the saying, to have a true friend, you must first be one. I think the same holds true here for partnerships and relationships that organizations require for success. Some of the characteristics of a strong partnership would be to become a true partner, like a true friend. Is trustworthy, dependable, honest, apologizes for doing wrong, and doesn't use people. And then on your end, how to be a good partner, you want to be supportive to a true partnership, and that will require being selfless on both ends. The ability to help each other through tough times and good times is also important, as is the ability to nurture and grow the partnership and make it last over a long period of time. And some of the strategies that you can use for developing and supporting strong partnerships, and we're going to see some of that in Amy Khalili's presentation coming up right after this section. But community partnerships are key to programmatic sustainability, and for example, partners can help your program identify unmet community needs and also strategies for addressing those needs. Partners can also provide needed services to program staff and members. You want to empower communities and give them a real stake in the program. So like I said before, I think it was under communication, is establish an advisory board and task it with meaningful work. They will also be able to help you identify unmet community needs and identify future potential partners who will help you advocate for the program and project. And changing the dynamics of the relationship with partners that you have now into one of true partnership is a way to address the partnership collaboration. You want to clearly determine the role that that future partner will play in your program, what their resources are, as well as the availability of those resources. And don't forget to provide them with available resources that you have that you might be able to offer to them, because it is a give and take, two-way street kind of a thing. And in order to be a good partner, you have to, in order to have a good partner, you need to be one first. And with that, we're going to turn it over to Napua, and she's going to introduce our guest presenter.
All right, thank you, Dennis. That was a lot of great information and a perfect time to introduce our guest presenter, Amy Khalili. Ms. Khalili previously led the Ahapunana Leo's Broadcast Media Initiative as executive producer and anchor for Aha'i Olelo Ola, and was the administrator for the Native Hawaiian Broadcast Medium Program. This 3-year program funded by ANA provided paid on-the-job training for a career in Native Hawaiian broadcast media. Trainees worked intimately with exciting new media initiatives, including Aha Punana Leo, Aha Iolelo Ola, Hawaiian language news program, Oiwi TV, the first Native Hawaiian television station, and Paliku documentary films. Amy is now the executive director for Makawila, an organization that produces educational videos and films in the Hawaiian language. Amy, are you able to participate here?
Yes, hello. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you. Thank you for joining us. Amy's going to talk about her organization and how they implemented some of the points that Dennis covered to be a sustainable program. Amy, go ahead.
Okay, mahalo nui, mahalo to you, Napua, or Dennis, Keone, everyone at Ka'anani'o. Also, a mahalo nui to the staff at ANA for giving me an opportunity today to kind of speak from a real life perspective, I guess, in terms of a lot of the information that Den has shared, which again, I echo Napua's mahalo, Den, a lot of good information that you're sharing with everyone. I think I'll just start out and reiterate that despite all the titles and all the organizations that I'm affiliated with, I think it's important that I state that I've been in the Hawaiian language revitalization movement for probably most of my adult life. And so that is kind of my passion, and that what motivates me in what I do, and thereby the organizations that I've been affiliated with. And so just to really quick get down to focusing in on this notion of taking a project to a program, and what I think for what we are doing, what has been some of our greatest assets. I'm going to just pick up right where Dennis left off in terms of the value of partnerships. I think that I could lump everything that I can attribute whatever level of success we've accomplished to this notion of critical partnerships in our community. So basically, prior to us starting our project, the organizations that we're working with right now, the new nonprofit called Makawila, Paliku Documentary Films, and Oiwi TV, we had actually already formulated loose partnerships between those entities, but we are the first to say that whatever we're doing today, the success that we are having in trying to stand up a Native Hawaiian television broadcast system is because we're standing on the shoulders of what has gone on in our community probably for the last 30 years as it relates to language revitalization, and also as it relates to the documentation and telling of our own stories about our own community through our own voice. So in other words, it's not something that we claim to be the originators of, and I think for me that speaks to the first partnership that we acknowledged and continue to acknowledge, and this was previous to us even having our project. So I think maybe that's one suggestion, piece of advice that I can offer to everyone, is that this notion of creating partnerships isn't something that maybe you only look at for post-project, and the motivation being sustainability, either once your program is already in, your project is already in motion, and or how you're going to survive beyond that 3-year grant period. But for us, it was something that was critical to even get going. And one of those critical partners for us was Aha Punana Leo. And the opportunities that we've been given are because we were associated with that entity, and that entity and the people who drive that Hawaiian language revitalization movement had a reputation already in our community. And so fortunately, we were able to stand on that and use that partnership. Another thing I think that has been critical for us is that very notion of having key partners in our Native community who have a like-minded approach to what we're doing and bring value exponentially to the work that we're doing. So case in point, Polycrew Documentary Films, owned by a Native Hawaiian filmmaker who had already been doing things and telling stories in our community. And so he comes in, brings the people and the partnerships that he already has to the table with him. And OEV TV, although it was a newer entity, also kind of brought that, that reputation to the table. And so it's something that we are very cognizant of and we don't take for granted. And so I think that's another one of our greatest assets, despite, you know, I will state that we've been fortunate to get some financial resources, a diversified set of financial resources since our project ended. But it is very clear to us that one of our greatest assets is the fact that we need to make sure that we continue to be of value to our community. Because ultimately, especially in a small community like Hawaii and then the Native Hawaiian community therein, our reputation is very important to us, and it is the thing that will open doors and or present challenges for us. So acknowledging the value of partnerships and relationships in the work that we do is very important, even I would argue to the bottom line, the typical bottom line of what we're able to do. One other thing I think that has been important as it relates to partnerships, it's not only people or other partners in the specific community, from our case, the Native Hawaiian community, but we were also fortunate to create a partnership with industry leaders in the state. And so specifically, from the get-go, we had a partnership with KGMB, which are the call letters for the CBS affiliate here in Hawaii. Fortunately, the general manager there, who is still there, a man named Rick Gangiardi, was very supportive of what we were doing. And we were able to form that partnership, which again just added to what we were able to do and extended our reach. But I think something that I wanted to kind of point out and highlight, something that we've experienced, is that in going for partners, in seeking out partners, it's okay to seek some of the big players that happen to impact the community that you do your work in. And for us, like I said, KGMB, having that CBS affiliate partner was huge. We were on their morning show. We do news segments every day in Hawaiian, and it went into probably 16,000 homes every morning. And so immediately our messaging, the stories we're telling about our community are getting out to all of these people. So we valued that relationship. We were humbled to have the opportunity and still have the opportunity to work with them. But something we realized immediately was that although they are a huge player here in the industry in Hawaii, they saw what we do as adding value to the work that they do. And that was really important for us to know, that it's not we're just out there trying to seek help via these partnerships. But ultimately, if we focus in on what we're trying to do and deliver a quality product, we are going to add value to our partners regardless of who they are. So that's one last point, I think, for us as we continue to go on with the work that we're doing in Native Hawaiian, Hawaiian culture, Hawaiian language media here in Hawaii, is although we are not by far resourced like other broadcasters are here in Hawaii. We are very, very small, but we try to make use of the resources that we do have, money and people and technology. The technological advancements out there are breaking down barriers on so many levels that are allowing people to do so many things, not only in media, since we are in a very tech-savvy industry, but across the board. So I think that's another bit of advice. But even though we're smaller and we have less resources, one thing that we try to concentrate on is delivering the highest quality product that we can. And people see that and they know that. And that, I think, is also key to long-term sustainability, whether you're offering a service or an actual product, that will start to open doors for other opportunities for resources to come in, and diversified resources, like, again, from dollars to people to potentially additional partnerships. So that's something that's been key for what we're doing. And I think my last note, sorry, I didn't want to take up these many minutes, but I think one last thing that we can offer in terms of from our experience is that while in seeking sustainability, you're going to want to take advantage of every opportunity that's out there in order to maintain, sustain, and potentially grow. Another thing that we have learned is regardless of how many opportunities that are out there, some of them are not going to be the right ones for you. And sticking to who you are, your value set, and your core competencies are really, really important. It may mean foregoing some opportunities for quote-unquote sustainability, but in the long run, it will benefit who you are because it will just increase your competitive advantage because you are staying true to who you are, and hopefully there aren't a lot of other people out there that are doing exactly what you're doing or can do what you're doing. And so if you focus in on that, it may sound weird or a little off track, but by sometimes staying close and staying tight, it'll help you grow and expand and sustain into the future. So anyway, that's mahalo again to all of you for bearing with me and giving me the opportunity to share with all of you. And for those of you who are working on projects or potentially going to be working on projects, we wish you luck. And if anybody has questions, wants to kind of pick at our brains or see other things that we've done, please feel free to get in touch with me at amy@makawila.org. Mahalo.
And then Amy, hopefully you'll be able to stick around for the question and answer section at the end of this presentation.
Sure. Will do.
Okay, great. Thank you so much for that. Thank you so much for that great insight, especially about the importance of partnerships and communication when it comes to developing your sustainability plan. We're going to move on with the presentation and go back to Dennis for one last point. Dennis?
Thank you, ladies. Look, the last regret that we came across in the top 5 was people would say that they wish that they let themselves be happier through their lifetime. And I felt happier like that because of the movie The Pursuit of Happiness, so that's not a typo. And what the point that we wanted to drive home here is that happiness is a choice that you make as an individual and also as an organization, and you make a commitment towards it in order to realize it. So basically the project succeeds when it becomes a program, and when it becomes a program that would then manifest itself into, hopefully, your organization being happy. Because you're taking steps towards fulfilling your mission statement and effectively sustaining a project, and somebody will notice you, like Amy was saying. The next slide we have is a participant poll. And we're going to ask 2 questions. The first question is going to be, of all of the top 5 regrets, and I have them all listed there, and you would select one by the letter up here on the button above your name in the main room. The 4th one on the right, it has A, B, C, D, or E. So the first one is, which of the top 5 regrets do you most closely identify with and would like to change for the better? So if you could, select one of the letters over there on that pull down. A would be, I wish I had the courage to live a life true to myself, or who you are and what you stand for. The second one, B, would be, I wish I hadn't worked so hard and were able to spend time with companions and loved ones. Number C would be, I wish I'd been able to express my feelings instead of keeping them in. Number 4 would be, I wish I'd stayed in touch with my friends and family. And number 5 would be, I wish I had let myself be happier. We should all do that. Matthew's going to...
And in order to vote in this poll, you just have to click on the 4th button on the right in the participants box right next to the raise hand icon. It looks like a letter A with a box in it. And then choose your choice there.
We'll give it a couple of seconds more. The result of that one looks like we had a bunch of hardworking people here, but I want you to also, the second part of this is to, using the same answers and using the same buttons, which of the top 5 regrets does your organization or an organization that you know of most closely identify with and would like to change for the better? If you can do that, we'll give it a couple of minutes. Okay, thank you so much for participating in the poll. We're going to go through summary and takeaways and then into the question and answer period for this webinar presentation. Just to keep in mind that our programmatic sustainability webinar started with the end in mind first, or began at the end in putting together your team of leadership, organization, staff members, and the mission statement, as well as the strategic plans and anything that can help you with that. And you need to well document your program. Be willing to reassess the actual programming design and establish genuine connections with community members through effective communication. Manage and leverage resources that you can measure as far as what value those resources bring towards your project and helping you reach your goals. And a successful formula would be you achieve programmatic sustainability, that equals success, equals organizational happiness. Thank you for the opportunity to provide the information we did today, and thank you to Amy Khalili for making a wonderful presentation. And I'll let the floor take us through to the question and answer period.
Okay, thank you, Dennis. We're running out of time for this webinar, so we will take a couple of question and answers. And for those of you who can stick around past the 10 o'clock time period, we would appreciate that, especially if you have some questions for our presenters. For those of you who have not used the Blackboard feature for question and answers, I just want to point out that there is a little hand icon up in the participant box. We will need you to raise your hand in order to ask a question, and we will answer your questions in the order that your hand was raised. You can participate by either pressing the talk button and speaking through your computer's microphone, or you can type your question into the chat box. So our first question comes from Jennifer Harrison, sorry about that. Jennifer, do you have a question for us? Jennifer is typing it into the chat box, and her question is, please repeat the name of the second analysis, similar to SWOT, that added in political and environmental analysis. I think that question goes to you, Dennis.
The second analysis was the PEST, pest analysis. Yeah, that's right, Amy. Political, environmental, social, and technical factors. Thank you.
Okay, I think Catherine had a question earlier. Catherine, did you want us to address that question now? Again, if you have a question, press the raise hand icon and we can answer your question in the order that you raise your hand. Okay, Catherine does have a question for us. And Catherine, did you want to ask your question through your computer or did you want to type that into the chat box? Looks like Catherine's typing it into the chat box. So while we're waiting for her to complete that, you can also ask Amy some questions here. She's still with us and ready to answer any questions you might have for her. Benny has a question. Benny, we're going to go ahead and take your question while we wait for Catherine to type hers into the chat box. Go ahead, Benny. Looks like Benny is typing his question into the chat box as well. So if we can get those questions up, we can make sure we try and answer them for you.
Hey, aloha, this is Amy.
Hey, Amy, go ahead.
You know, I'm just scrolling back and I saw Catherine's initial question, which was, can anyone concretely address strategies to sustain a program that is funded at relatively high levels by ANA funding? So hoping or assuming that maybe that's still her question, I thought I'd just speak to that a little. And I think I may have glossed over it in some of the comments that I made, but in general for us, there was no doubt that subsequent to that initial project, we had to keep seeking out various sources of soft dollars. So basically, we continued to apply for various types of grants, whether they be federal or any opportunities available to us on the state level, some foundation funding, which fortunately we were successful in some, not all. So I don't know, that seems kind of obvious, Catherine, I don't know if that helps. Another thing for us, I think that I mentioned in terms of the partnerships that we created and the service or product that is being produced, to the extent that it's competitive and quality in nature, it may be a way to generate fee-for-service income. So whether that's via contracts with other agencies or something that's not necessarily a grant, in nature, we have, and it may be, very specific to the type of work that we do, because we do have a product that we can offer, quote unquote, to the market here in Hawaii. But that's also been something that we've tried to do, is to just garner contract dollars or to offer our products, our video products, the services, even content creation. For us here in Hawaii, and I think I mentioned this, people out there in the market are going to start to want what it is that you have to offer, and initially you may seem more like the David than the Goliath in the equation, but we've realized that people have come knocking on our doors to acquire our services in the production work that we do. So it hasn't only been about soft dollars for us, but it has to do, again, with building those relationships and marketing the work that you do, so people know that you're there and can offer these services and products, and maybe garner another diversified income stream via that method.
Amy. Catherine also extended her question and says, as we are located in American Samoa, funding from foundations and other government grants are virtually non-existent. Given the poverty level in American Samoa, fee-for-service is not a realistic source of funding. Anything you can say in pertaining to that?
Me? Mahalo for that clarification, Catherine. I agree that that is a challenge that we aren't facing. And maybe I'm not sure also what it is that your organization or that your entity does. There are some, we have not taken this up as well. We haven't done this ourselves, but I know other entities that there are some straight up fundraising mechanisms to be had kind of through the web and through social media. And it's kind of you put your project and what you're doing out there, and maybe someone else who's on the webinar right now can think of one of those website, a startup. It's like it's a place to garner startup funds, but you basically write a story about what it is that you do, and you put it up on, you put it out there via the web, via social media, and people who are drawn to the work that you do will just start to donate to what it is that you're doing. So that's kind of maybe out of the box. I don't know if that's something that might fit. It potentially is something that might overcome the barriers that you mentioned in your comment, Catherine. That having been said, however, I would just kind of offer a suggestion that you use whatever means are available in terms of technology to, one, just get your story out there as a place to start, so that there may be people, entities beyond literally beyond the shores of Samoa that may want to support what it is that you're doing and aren't necessarily, they're maybe not right there in Samoa proper with you, but nonetheless may be able to help. Yep, and somebody just mentioned it. It's called Kickstarter. Mahalo, Benny.
Okay, Catherine, hopefully that answered your question. And Benny does have a question as well, and he says, this is for you, Amy. I'm living on Kauai and would really like to know if there are any language resources you know offhand that I can implement into my community outreach / language is so important in maintaining culture.
Yes, Benny. You hit the jackpot. No, if it may be something that you and I can talk about offline, and I'm going to type my email address. Email me and we can start a discussion. Fortunately, there are, relatively speaking, there's a myriad of resources available. So yes, shoot me an email and we can start that conversation offline.
Okay, we are running over time, so I think that's going to be our last question for this webinar series. I see Catherine has raised her hand again, but maybe we can answer your question in the chat box. Oh, Catherine, okay. Yeah, Catherine, if you go ahead and put your question into the chat box, we'll cover that in the chat box there. So we'll conclude this webinar, but before we do that, we want to remind you of the upcoming webinars to complete this series about project sustainability, and that will be presented on September 12th by the Alaska region for Part 3, covering practical tools for achieving community and political sustainability. And then on September 6th, the Western region will present how you achieve financial sustainability. So make sure you sign up for those. And we like to thank all of you for joining us today, for participating and for asking questions. And for more information about the Administration for Native Americans, you can go to the website posted here, www.acf.hhs.gov. Mahalo and have a great rest of the day. Thank you, everyone.